Hi, I'm Esther. I'm a master. Right. No, I'm a master. And I'm introducing Representative Ron. So Ron Day is a professor of economics at BYU, Idaho. He specialized in applied microeconomics, public economics, how do I say it? Quantitative methods, economics of education, poverty economics, and choice. He's been teaching for a combined 26 years, beginning at the University of Ohio University, Eastern, and the last 20 years at BYU, Idaho. Born in Salt Lake City, Utah, Ron studied at the University of Utah and earned an PhD in economics at the University of Connecticut. He was appointed to the Idaho Judicial Council, chairs the Idaho Republican president in 2012, and currently serves in the Idaho House of Representatives, and is on the board of scholars at the Foundation for Economic Education. Ron and his wife, Maria, have 4 awesome children, 1 social dog, and 2 horrible cats.
Thanks to Alan and Elizabeth for putting this on again and for inviting me again. It's always one of the highlights of my year to come to the Northwest Liberty Academy. So here we are, 2021 edition. How many of you are here for the first time, Northwest Liberty Academy? Woo, that's great. How many of you have been here more than twice? Holy cow, wow. So you guys are going to hear some of the same stuff, maybe even some of the same jokes, because I don't really have any jokes, so you can be stuck with that. But what I want to talk about today is economic freedom and economic prosperity. That's why that's the title. And part of what I'm presenting today, I just learned a new way to talk about it last week. And so I'm trying that out for the first time. So when we start talking about how business is perceived in the United States, that'll be new for me. So maybe it'll be a little bit rougher. Maybe you can ask some questions, give me some good insights there, and make me a better teacher in some ways. So I want to start off talking about economic prosperity. And the way we talk about an economy doing well is based on how much we produce in the economy, knowing that everything we produce, we get to use as well, right? So economic prosperity is talking about how much production you actually do in an economy. Can anyone tell me what the 3 words are that we use to measure the amount of economic production? What do we call it? Yo.
Quantity, quality. I don't know the third one.
Good guesses, but not it. It's one phrase with 3 words in it. Maybe I should put it that way. Talk to me.
Gross domestic product.
Correct. Gross domestic product. Odd sounding word, but it's gross, meaning that it's total production. And it's domestic, meaning the production that's done within our economic borders here. So gross domestic product is the total production of all final goods and services produced within our economy. Here is a graph showing GDP over the centuries. Look, it goes back to 1000 before Christ. And if you look at GDP, this is per capita. Who wants to answer a question? Calvin, where's Calvin? Calvin, what does per capita mean? No idea. No, that's not what it means. Good try. Yes.
Literally per head, per person.
Per person. So we're measuring GDP per person. And notice that this is inflation adjusted. So this is measured in dollars constant over time. And look at this amount of production per person measured across the centuries. Isn't that an amazing graph? Al Gore talked about a hockey stick graph with respect to temperature, but it wasn't as dramatic as this. It looks like the amount of production per person has held pretty much stable over this period. Can you see my cursor when I do that? Oh yeah, you can. Good. All right, so it's held pretty much stable. In fact, in the early to mid 1700s, the quality of life, even of colonialists in the United States, the quality of life was not much measurably better than the quality of life before Christ walked here. It was mostly an agrarian economy. You produced for yourself. You grew your own stuff. Maybe there was a little bit of trade, but it really wasn't much different in terms of your subsistence, even in the 1700s versus 2,000 years before that. But then all of a sudden something changed. What? Whoa, back. Okay, so what happened here? What all of a sudden happened in the late 1700s?
Industrial Revolution.
Industrial Revolution. But why didn't the Industrial Revolution happen in, say, 100 AD? Why not? Were we stupid?
76.
Yeah, yeah, go for it. He raised his hand and drew my attention. Did you see that? Okay, go ahead.
The capital was moving in different ways around then than it had ever done before.
Absolutely. In actually about 100 AD, did you know that one of the gifts to the Emperor of China was a little steam engine? It was a little unit that had little, you lit some fuel there, some wood and stuff, and it heated up this little pot of steam and it made it rotate. And so they had a steam engine actually as early as 100 AD. But why didn't the Industrial Revolution start then? Well, maybe a lot of factors, and I'll point to a few that I kind of hypothesize about. Number one, there was an enlightenment that happened after the Dark Ages, late 1700s. There was an enlightenment in terms of industry, figuring out better ways of doing things. I would say that there was also an enlightenment in terms of economic philosophy. It was in the late 1700s that Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations. You heard of The Wealth of Nations? Basically, he said that this idea of mercantilism, where each country just fights other countries to be wealthier than other countries, meaning that we want to sell them stuff, but we don't want them to sell us their stuff because that makes us poor, because they were only measuring the amount of gold in your country as far as wealth. He says, no, trade helps both ways. And so I think that economic enlightenment was part of it. But I also think that it was when we kind of turned more towards free trade and encouraging private property and trade with one another. There might also be a moral argument to be made that maybe we became better people. And the way we viewed economic wealth was not about beating each other down or beating other countries down, but maybe trade and cooperation work better too. So whatever the reasons are, I would argue that the prosperity that started in the late 1700s, a large measure of it was probably due to the fact that we became economically more free, that we encouraged trade, we encouraged cooperation rather than fighting and battling with one another. I'm not saying we haven't fought in battle since then, certainly have, but Adam Smith, one of the quotes from him is that man is an animal that makes bargains. No other animal does this. You don't see dogs trading bones with another dog. Have you ever seen that happen? They don't do that. And every time I put a rule like this up there, I have one of my students who says, well, wait a minute, I just saw a video where monkeys trade food with each other. And I'm like, okay, fine. We're better than monkeys though, so even better than that. The invisible hand. This is Adam Smith talking about how competition actually inspires people to do better. And in this, he talks about the producer, and I'm just going to read the end of it. You can read the whole thing, right? He's talking about the producer. He, the producer, intends only his own gain, and he's in this, as in many other cases, led by an invisible hand to promote an end, which was no part of his intention. What does that mean to you? When you talk about a producer trying to do better for themselves, but actually ending up helping others. Yeah, there's actually increased wealth, and there's better off than before. As the producer becomes better off, what else happens? Yeah, the people the producer works for and works with are also better off. Dad, what's your favorite fast food? Favorite fast food? It's not a hard question. You can even lie. We don't know. Zips. I don't even know what that is. Is it burgers? Zips burgers? Yeah, it's just shooting in the dark. Yeah, I love those zips. All right, you said McDonald's and we can all.
No, I don't like that.
Okay, fine. All right. What's your favorite burger place that we would all know?
Mom's house.
loves Arby's. Does Arby's love her? No, they don't love her. When you go there, do they serve you food? These are questions. Do they serve you food because they love you? No. Do you give them money because you love them? Why do you guys do that? Yeah, because you love yourself. It's okay. I mean, in this context, right? You look, and Arby's loves themselves, but they figured out to make themselves better off means making customers happy. They don't have to love you, just make you happy and they do better. Isn't that great? That sounds like cooperation. That sounds like trade, making people better off. Adam Smith, one of my favorite quotes from him is, he says, it's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interests. Arby's isn't just trying to be nice to us because they love us. They try and be nice to us because it makes them better off. Their self-interest now becomes our self-interest in an atmosphere of economic trade. When we don't trade, we'll get to that in a second. Yeah, trade creates value. When I buy from the fast food place, I value their food more than the dollars I spend. That's what I do. When they give me the food, they value my dollars more than the food they're giving me. That's why they trade. We're both made better off. When we talk about competition, it's not the firm competing against the buyer. Both of them are willing participants, aren't they? It's firms competing against other firms is what we talk about with competition. And as a customer, do you like firms competing with other firms? Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, isn't that great? They're falling over themselves, trying to find ways to make you like them more than the other firms. McDonald's builds play places to get more families to come there because more families means more business. And when McDonald's builds a play place, then what does Burger King do? They build a play place. Yeah. And so they're always trying to find new ways to do things. I'm old enough to remember when McDonald's did not serve breakfast. Did you know that? They haven't always served Egg McMuffins. Why did they start serving Egg McMuffins? Somebody there at McDonald's headquarters said, wait, we have all these restaurants across the country with all these grills and kitchen stuff and dining areas sitting idle for 2/3 of the, or for 1/3 of the day. What if we found a way to make breakfast and serve breakfast too? Maybe we could make money early in the day as well. So they came up with a menu and started serving breakfast. Then Burger King did. And Wendy's was the last holdout. They didn't, I don't know why they didn't want to serve breakfast. So finally, in the last couple of years, they started serving breakfast instead.
Well, they don't want to serve round hamburgers either, so.
Well, you know, they got to make themselves different somehow. All right, well, trade creates value. That's my whole point here. And for trade to happen, here's 4 things that have to happen. And Mr. Beatty also talked about these 2 things. We're going to overlap a bit here. It's all good. Repetition is good. I need it. That's right. In order to be able to trade, you have to own something. You can only trade if you have property rights over something. So property rights absolutely essential for trade. I cannot trade my little brother and little sister away because I don't own them. But if I did, I could trade them, but I don't. That's why we don't allow ownership. Okay, so economic freedom. Would you guys trade your brother? No. Don't answer that. Don't answer. Economic freedom. We have to have the freedom to trade with one another. The ability to trade has to be legal in some way. A legal system to make trades more sound. That if I had to worry about you ripping me off every time, I'm not going to trade with you as much. But if I know that I can go and sue you in court if you try to rip me off, I'm going to be more likely to trade with lots of people. So a legal system actually facilitates a trading economy because people don't have to worry about getting ripped off as much if there's a legal system as a resort for feeling ripped off. And sound money. That we don't always trade goods for goods. Sometimes we trade goods for money and then use the money to buy something else. If the money holds its value, it's going to work great. If it doesn't, then trade is going to be difficult. Sound money is important. Yes.
That's one thing that I noticed with our activity earlier today.
Yeah.
Is because there was no currency system and everything was barter.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to get what you needed. So you had to make sure that whoever had what you needed something that you had.
That's right. So you have to go out there and find it. In economics, we call it the double coincidence of wants. They have to want what you have, and you have to want what they have. And when that happens, it's kind of magic. But if I had to find somebody that wanted economics lesson to feed me dinner, I'm going to go hungry a lot. But what I did find is the university's willing to pay me money to teach, and then I can use that money for whatever I want. Great example. Thank you. How long do I go? I want to know. When's my deadline? Okay, we'll pause. 5 minutes. That's great. Okay. Through a lot of slides.
We're in good shape. How much time do you need?
5 o'clock, okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll go till 5. Or maybe longer. We'll see. Okay. All right, so all right, I do want to show this video. I'm going to show it. See, that was my decision point. So this is a video about Cuba's economy. About how many of you saw this last year? Did I show it last year? I think I may have skipped it. All right, good to see you.
Ya que no vamos a tener una bendición medio de casi 900, casi 40.
Did you catch that? This guy makes more in one day than the doctor makes in a month. He's a taxi driver. Well, he's actually a trained engineer, but engineers make even less than doctors. Welcome to the Cuban economy. Right after the socialist revolution in 1959, Fidel Castro's government seized almost all private businesses and land.
You won't have to worry about next year. The state will do your planning from now on.
Every restaurant, factory, hospital, and home was property. The state set prices for everything and decided how much people got paid. The private sector disappeared overnight.
The world these men live in desperately needs economic reforms.
You can see the result of this if you go looking for food in Havana today. When I showed up, I was excited to see what street food was on offer. But all I could find was just this, ham sandwiches everywhere. Here's a typical scene in a Cuban eatery. Too many employees in an empty establishment with empty shelves. They're just waiting for food deliveries from the government and putting in their 8 hours so that they can go home. They get paid the same whether they sell 1 plate of food or 50. This model just doesn't work. Cuba survived for many years with subsidies from the Soviet Union. But since its collapse, the economy's been getting worse every year. This lady is showing me her government ration card that she's kept for decades. Cubans use these cards to go to the storage house to get their monthly rations.
El aceite es menos cantidad, los granos que son menos, el azúcar que es menos, y hay jabón de baño, de baño, de teniente, pero cada día aumenta.
¿Usted cree que han mejorado el proceso? The government realized this was becoming a problem in the 90s and started giving out private licenses, fueling a small but growing private sector. I stumbled upon a private restaurant in Havana and it was a totally different experience than the public ones. There was actually movement, good service. The owners had to sell good food if they wanted to stay in business, which brings me back to the taxi driver and the doctor. The reason why taxi drivers make so much more than doctors is because they have private licenses. Their salaries are not set by the state, and they can charge tourists high prices. I paid $25 to get from the airport into Havana, and in that 30 minutes, this driver made more than an average monthly salary in Cuba, which is $20.
Trabajo 8 horas como licenciado con las personas de enfermería y diario. Nos damos 50 pesos a los
One of the problems with this is that you get highly trained workers leaving their trade to go do remedial work in the private sector. This guy's an engineer, but he's cooking in a private restaurant. These guys are accountants by trade, but are making a killing driving around tourists on taxi bikes. This woman is a nurse, but she hasn't worked in a hospital in years. This guy is an electrical engineer, but he opened up a barber shop in his house and makes 10 times more than he would in his field of study. Imagine trying to live on the Cuban average salary of $20 per month. When you ask them how they do it, they all have the same response.
Todos tenemos que hacer algo fuera de lo que es salario, porque si no, no.
Just beneath the surface in Cuba is a bustling informal market. where Cubans make an additional income on top of their official salary just to survive.
Sobrevivimos gracias a ese mercado oscuro, ese mercado subterráneo. Cuando yo bajo a mi casa, uso la calle para buscar el periódico, ya estoy cometiendo el primer delito de representación. Porque ese señor anciano que está vendiendo el periódico, me está vendiendo sobreprecio. Ya tienen arreglado esto con la persona que trabaja en el tranquilo, que guarda los periódicos, se los vende.
We tend to associate black markets with dangerous activities. But in Cuba, people sell illegal popsicles or newspapers, not to get rich, but just to survive. But things are slowly changing. Since Fidel's brother Raul took over in 2008, the number of private licenses has increased significantly every year, and 20% of the economy is now private. But still, most Cubans are jaded by the decades they've had to use illegal creativity just to survive.
Donde hay un solo partido. Where are
Okay. All right, think about that video. Think about what it said at the end. Most people do another job on top of their official job. And then Jurassic Park. Okay. Do you remember Jurassic Park? How many have seen Jurassic Park? Raise them up. Okay. All right, in Jurassic Park, the whole idea is they created a theme park full of real dinosaurs that they got from DNA from a mosquito, yada, 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 right? And so they're showing the potential investor this Jurassic Park. And you remember as they showing him all the dinosaurs and everything, the rides they have? He says, well, aren't you worried about the dinosaurs repopulating and overrunning the island? What was his response? Females. Yeah, they made them all females, right? And then later on, the Jeff Goldblum character finds some dinosaur eggs that have hatched and little dinosaur trails are leaving. And what was the line that he said?
Nature finds a way.
Life finds a way. Excellent. If I had a reward, I'd toss it to you now.
It's my favorite movie.
Okay, there you go. He said life finds a way. I have the same view about markets. As an economist, markets find a way. The Cuban economy is not serving the people very well. So what do? They find something to trade. They find somewhere else to work. They do something else. People want to engage in markets because it prospers them. So they try and find a way. People want to exchange. It's in our nature. We're not dogs. We will trade bone for bone and other things. And so trade makes us happier. That's what we do. And do I show you this too? You want to watch another video? Yeah. Okay, let's watch it. Yeah, it's better than listening to you. Okay, so okay, I'll give a little preview of it. It's Milton Friedman, who is a Nobel Prize winning economist. But I'm going to preview it first. Yeah. So it's Milton Friedman on the Phil Donahue show. Phil Donahue is like the godfather of daytime talk television. And notice in this interview, one thing, it's Phil Donahue's the host, but he lets the Milton Friedman give a complete answer. So it gives great complete answers on his questions about, yeah, isn't capitalism bad? You know, Phil Donahue wants him to talk about all the bad things of capitalism. Let's see what Milton Friedman actually says, though.
When you see around the globe a maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the concentration of power, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on? Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other side of greed. The world runs on individuals pursuing their self-interest. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worse off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear. That there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by free enterprise. So it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system. And what does reward virtue? You think the communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political class? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us. Well, I don't even trust you to do that.
Sometimes those little guys, they just know their stuff, don't they? So his whole thesis is that capitalism and free trade leads to more prosperity than anyone trying to plan an economy for you. Do you believe that? Yes. Do you believe it because you know it, or is it a faith thing? Both. Both. Well, let's see. Let's look at some evidence. All right. What's this? Yeah, South and North Korea. It's a nighttime satellite image, kind of enhanced, and it's this. What's this very bright spot here?
South Korea.
South Korea. I think that's Seoul, isn't it? And by the way, North Korea is right here. Did you know South Korea is not an island? It's attached to the mainland, and this is North Korea. That's all dark at night. Why is North Korea all dark? It's the same region of the world, same basic eco structure, right? The resources aren't any better or worse for North Korea than they are for South Korea. Why does South Korea stay lit up and stay active, and North Korea go to sleep?
They don't bring up like food.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe it's their economic system. It's really where I would say. So, Mr. Beatty mentioned the Fraser Institute does an index of economic freedom. So is the Heritage Institute and some others for the Heritage Foundation. Here it is in 2018 showing a world map based on freedom. The blue is the most free, and then the red is the least free. And here's the criteria they use. The size of the government as part of the economic sector. The bigger the government, arguably the more it's planned and less is left up to free economy. The legal system of property rights, access to sound money, remember those requirements for trade to exist. The freedom to trade internationally, and kind of on the negative scale, the regulation. The higher regulation is, the less free it is. The lower regulation, the more free it is. So if we were to rank countries based on this freedom index, what's at the top?
United States.
Not the United States. It was blue though. It was one of the blue ones, so that's nice. Here's the top of the scale. It's really not fair. Hong Kong's not a country, but it's an economy. So, but the Hong Kong, as of 2018, I don't know what's happened in the last 3 years. I don't know if it still maintains that or not. But we have Singapore, New Zealand, Ireland. Ireland ahead of the United States. Can you believe that? In terms of economic freedom. Mauritius and Georgia, that's not the state, that's the country, right? You guys are schooled in world geography. What do you think's at the bottom of the list? I think North Korea, but did you know that North Korea does not show up at the bottom? You know why? They don't even have enough data to put them in their index. So they probably would be at the bottom, but they don't even show up because they don't even need to be included in the index. But here we are, the very bottom, winning the award for the least free, Venezuela. Just about that, Libya, Argentina, Algeria. So here are all the countries ranked, and there's a lot in between the blue and the red there. But at least you have an idea of free countries in terms of economic terms and less free countries in terms of the economy. I ask you this. If you were in one of the poorest households in your country, would you rather be in one of the blue countries or the red countries? Why blue? Opportunity. So you think that the freedom gives you opportunity. Wouldn't it be cool if we could look and just see, do the blue countries do better than the red countries in terms of what you would like? Think of all the things the progressives want out of society. What do they want? They want lower poverty. They want education, they want healthcare, all the things that they want. Let's check it out. In each of these graphs, I'm going to show you on the left is those countries measured up to be the least free, the red countries. And on the right are the most free countries. And we'll go through these different topics and see how the countries do on these. In terms of income per capita, yeah, the free countries have higher income per capita. So if you want income per capita, great. But then you might say, yeah, they have high income per capita, but it's all going to the wealthy 1%, right? Isn't that what you hear from Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and stuff? Well, let's economic freedom and economic growth. We have more economic growth. Yeah, but it's all going to the wealthy. Well, let's look at the poorest, the income shares of the poorest. It's not really that big of a difference. The most free countries have a higher income share to the poorest 10% than others, but it's not really correlated, but there's some other things here. How about this? The income earned by the poorest 10%. So if you are in the bottom 10% on the economic spectrum, in a free country, you earn, what, about 8 times what you would earn in one of the least free countries. And so that's kind of in absolute terms. And then how about this? You want to live long? Live in a free country. You live about 16 years longer. Civil rights and political liberties. Free countries, free, economically free countries, more civil liberties too. Higher literacy rates. So maybe that's better education. You betcha. Education quality, also higher in free economies. Quality of healthcare, also higher. And back to the poverty thing, poverty is lower in the free economies. So all those things that your progressive friends are really interested in, they should be the biggest fans of economic freedom. But they're not. We need to educate. We need to talk to them about it. Well, economic freedom, I argue, is one of the main reasons for that bend in the graph on the GDP per capita. But we need to talk about why that happens. I mean, we measured all these things, and oh, that's Adam Smith's quote again. Who's this guy? Karl Marx, yeah. It's like a backwoods Santa. All right, but he's in the Communist Manifesto, which is really a dig or a criticism of capitalism. There's this little tidbit, this little nugget here. I'm just going to read part of this, that in his critique of capitalism, he says, in capitalist society, in place of the old wants satisfied by the production of the country, we find new wants requiring for their satisfaction the products of distant lands and climes. In place of the old local and national seclusion and self-sufficiency, we have universal interdependence of nations. Now, he says that's a bad thing. I look at that and go, wait, it's because of international trade, I get cool things like Nutella. Can you imagine without international trade? Oh, that'd be a shame not to ever have Nutella or a German car. Yeah. Oh, so we wouldn't know what we're missing? That's a shame. I'd be worse off than not even know it. Wow. But I like having stuff from fun. And by the way, is it a negative that we're dependent or interdependent on other countries for these things? Did you know that there are studies that show that countries that trade with one another tend to be more peaceful with one another? And it kind of makes sense. You don't want to shoot your trading partners, do you? I mean, I don't want anything to happen to my local grocery store, because then where will I shop? So there's an interest of mine to make sure our grocery store does. There's an interest of ours as the United States to make sure our trading partners are still doing well. We don't want to go to war with them. That might give you some short-term gains, but it's certainly not good for the long term. Mr. Beatty mentioned the iPencil, and he gave a great little summary of iPencil. I encourage you to read it. And here's the 3 highlights that he gave too, is that nobody knows how to make a pencil. There's not one pencil expert on the planet that can do it from scratch to pencil. Nobody knows. Yet billions of them get produced each year. There's not one mastermind coordinating all this. There's a lot of coordinators with different steps doing this. And not only that, people don't make pencils because they want a pencil. You don't even make your own pencils. Who makes the pencils? People who want to do better for themselves are working hard to make pencils happen or parts of pencils happen so that they can do better for themselves. And you get pencils in the end. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? That's great. Okay. Well, the last part of what I want to talk about today is that hopefully I've made the case that trade is good, that trade leads to prosperity, that capitalism leads to prosperity and does a lot of good things in our lives. I heard that yawn. I could hear that. And so I stood up 14 minutes. All right. So trade adds to prosperity. Why is it then, with all these good things that come out of it, that business gets such a bad name? Surveys show that if you ask people about businesses, a lot of people will agree that business is evil. You ever heard people say that? You ever gotten that message in the news that the businesses are bad? That you might hear messages about how do we rein in bad business? How do we, get them in line and have them stop doing their bad things? Students in college surveyed, the business majors are embarrassed about saying that they're business majors. They make up things. They'll say they're in engineering or they're in finance, but they don't even want to say finance because that sounds bad.
Gender studies.
Say something, yeah, something positive, I guess. I don't know. But why would you be embarrassed about being a business major? It's because there's this growing, prevailing opinion that business is somehow not an honorable field.
Politics of envy.
The politics of envy. That's a good way to put it. In fact, there are some headlines and stories across the country of some universities wanting to get rid of their business schools and business departments and have no business graduates anymore. Because in some universities, which have been taken over by the progressive left and critical race theories, that they think intersectionality and gender studies is more important somehow than the virtues of business and the good things that come from it. So this is what we're up against.
If we make business so that it's unstable, and we don't barter trade, and we don't be independent, or then who are we dependent on?
Yes, we're depending on ourselves or on a state. That really, do you really want to be dependent on the state? Do you want Joe Biden to have a voice in deciding your future? How about all of you? But anyway, this isn't even political. This is just economics policy that we're talking about. In fact, there's the idea that somehow when a business gets successful, Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, the Walton family, that they are somehow obligated to give back to society. You heard that? Somebody gets successful in business, they said, I feel like I need to give back. Well, when you use the phrase give back, what does that imply? That you've taken. And that goes against exactly what we're talking about with Arby's. Yeah. And Arby's didn't take from their customers. Arby's does well by making customers happy. Why don't we say that consumers, after benefiting from all these businesses, need to give back to the business community? For some reason we feel like, oh, the businesses we're taking. They're not. If it's voluntary trade, there should be no obligation unless there's that prevailing feeling that businesses are doing something bad somehow. Well, let's explore that. Are they doing something bad? Hey, what is your ultimate goal as a human? To be happy. I think that's great. I mean, it's on my emails. When you get an email from me, it says happiness and moral duty are inseparably connected. It's a George Washington quote. The goal for humans is to be happy. In fact, there's a fancy word for it. Eudaimonia or something. It's to live a full and happy life. And this is kind of a Greek word going back to the day that they said, this is the point of human existence, is to be happy. Is this your goal too? Okay, well, let's explore how to get happy. How can people make this happen? How can businesses support a model that helps make this happen for you too? I argue that without business, the opportunity for happiness is diminished. Businesses actually give us the opportunity for much greater happiness. And here's kind of the stepwise building of this foundation. To be happy, I think, means to be in a just and humane society. Fair and humane, that we're not going to treat people unwell. We're not going to be mean to people. Well, to have a just and humane society, we need proper institutions, including moral institutions that says you can't be mean to others, you can't harm others. You should work to help others. You should work to help your families. So proper institutions. Well, one of those institutions that needs to be in place that we found, prosperity and happiness go hand in hand, is a properly functioning market economy. Properly functioning. You can have improperly functioning ones, but a properly functioning one gives the greatest opportunity for prosperity. A properly functioning market economy relies on honorable businesses. Honorable businesses. The act of a business gaining profits and prospering is not dishonorable. A business that steals or defrauds or abuses in some way is not honorable. And I think we would all agree on that. That's why we have laws that prevent businesses from defrauding its customers, from hurting people. And that's why we have laws that prevent people from hurting people as well. So honorable business is part of this. Honorable businesses give genuine value for people improving their lives. Okay, so ways to gain wealth. Historically, this is my favorite part of this, and hopefully I get this right. This is my first time ever talking about it. So there's three ways to prosper, for yourself to prosper, economically speaking. One is you can produce for yourself. You can grow your garden, you can build your house, you can build stuff for yourself. Have you ever built stuff for yourself? Yeah. And then grown-ups in here, have you ever improved your house or improved your yard? Makes you feel good that you've accomplished something and then you can enjoy it, and that's one way to do it. But that only gives you minimal gains. Imagine the amount of wealth I can amass for myself if I had to produce it all for myself. I'm not good at gardening, I'm not good at building, I can't repair cars. What am I possibly going to do for myself? And teach myself economics, that's about the only skill I have. I don't know what I'm going to do. So if my wealth depended only on my own efforts, I'm not going to do that well. But there's another way I can get wealthy. Extraction. I can steal from others. I can make people slaves of mine. I can go to war with other countries. Countries have done this, right? They sought to make themselves wealthy by conquering other countries and taking their resources. In fact, I've heard the term colonialism, extracting resources from other countries, or slavery or something. That's extraction. That's another way to become wealthy. There's a third way, cooperation, exchange. Do something good, trade with somebody else for something else that's good, and you both prosper. Exchange is another way to get wealthy. Trade creates wealth. The only reason you trade with somebody is because you value what they have more than what you have. And they trade with you for the similar reason, and you're both better off. That's a way to become more wealthy. So here's three basic ways to increase your wealth. Do it yourself, steal or pillage from others, or trade. Now, which sounds the nicest? In working with others, working for myself is out of the question because I can't produce for myself. I'm really lame. Okay. But in working with others, I have the two options, extraction or cooperation. And I asked which was better. Trade. Isn't extraction the more honorable of this? I'm not extraction. Cooperation is more honorable. Isn't that more honorable? Well, here's one of the miracles of economics life. Not only is cooperation the most moral of the two, it is also the one that leads to more prosperity. What a fortunate coincidence. The thing that is just and moral also happens to be the most prosperous. Isn't that great? Why can't we teach that to everyone? That a market economy is not bad. Businesses are not bad. Businesses facilitate trade. All we need to make sure is that we have honorable businesses. So here's honorable business. Number one, no extractive behavior ever. We don't let them steal. We don't let them hire slaves. We don't let them torch their competitors, right? We don't let them burn down their competitors' businesses. No extractive behavior ever. But we absolutely encourage the cooperative behavior where they produce and trade. Absolutely honorable. And maybe we want to go here. Commit to providing genuine value to others. Maybe there are some businesses that are better than others. I would argue a business that prints and sells Bibles is better than a business built on pornography or something like that. Maybe we can talk about honorable business and just kind of what value they add to society too. That would be nice too. And I would bet that would add more prosperity for a community. But I'll tell you this, government is full of people who view themselves as honorable and virtuous, who think that they can make society more wealthy through extraction, through forcing trades that they think are good for others, taking your taxes and saying, we're going to build nice things with it. That's extractive behavior. It has been proven to be less prosperous, less profitable than cooperative behavior. So that's just a warning there. Businesses accomplish this better than a government would ever accomplish it. Cooperation and trade leading to prosperity. I'll finish this up. I got 3 minutes just to talk about, yeah, Nate, you talked about prosperity, great, more prosperity, but it's unfair if it's just the capitalists that benefit from this. Well, let's look at this. If we're talking about justice, justice requires inequality. Would it be just for everyone to get exactly the same regardless of their contribution to society? No, I mean, you've all, I don't know in school if you've done group projects before, you ever been frustrated by the one slacker getting the same grade as you? That doesn't feel just, does it? And I'm not saying that the inequality is just like making sure that the non-producers don't get anything. It's just that also rewarding the producers too. But even that, even whether it doesn't even have to be a slacker versus a producer mentality. It could just be a different stages of life or different value added because of the industry you might happen to be in. There are two solutions to poverty. Remove all inequality, making everyone the same. That necessarily means lowering the standards for everyone. Everyone will be equal, but they'll be equally poor. Or increase prosperity, allow people to trade. Some will be better than others. That's okay. Prosperity overall is greater and opportunity is greater. Who are these two people? Elon Musk and LeBron James. Yeah. Did you know that they earn a lot of money? Elon Musk is worth $150 billion. With a B. LeBron James, $500 million. Are you worried about inequality in this scenario? Do you feel bad for LeBron James? You don't feel bad for him? Elon Musk is earning 300 times the income that LeBron James is. Isn't that obscene? Don't you feel bad for LeBron James? Wow, but look at this. That's me. 0. Should you worry about my welfare in this scenario? I do now. You know what? I drove a car over here. I own a car. We have a house and a dog and 2 horrible cats. But my life is horrible. The fact that Elon Musk has been so successful does not make me worse off any one bit. And all of you in here, you look like you come from nice, well-maintained households. You're not made worse off when LeBron James earns another million, are you? In fact, you might argue that when Elon Musk earns another million, he's made society better off by at least that amount. Otherwise, nobody would have given him that much. Does that make sense? How about this? Maybe getting it closer to home. On one side, you have the McDonald's manager. On the other side, you have the McDonald's high school starting employee. Did you know they don't earn the same?
Oh,
I know. She earns maybe $20,000 a year. The manager $50,000 a year. That's 2.5 times as much. Should we insist that they earn the same amount?
Living wage.
Well,
Yeah, this one has more experience, been on the job, and arguably adds more value to McDonald's than the new worker, right? It makes sense that she should earn more, 2.5 times more. Here's another one. A first-year trader on Wall Street versus a Wall Street boss. Do you think they earn the same amount?
no.
How about 100,000 a year versus 25 million a year? I looked it up. That guy, 25 million a year. Okay. He earns 250 times more than this starting first-year trader. I ask you this. Which would you rather be? The new worker at McDonald's or the new worker on Wall Street? But the new worker on Wall Street her salary is getting dwarfed by her boss. But the one at McDonald's, boss only earns 2.5 times as much. If you're worried about equality, you want to be the McDonald's starting worker, right? That's closer to equality. But your concern is not equality, is it? It's prosperity. And so we should not wring our hands over the inequality. That the starting McDonald's worker, I argue, is off to a very prosperous life because that starting job gives them the opportunity to learn to show up on time, to take orders, to be a productive worker, to smile and work well with customers, and that's going to serve them well all their life. I don't care that they're not earning as much as their boss. That's not the question. It's whether over their lifetime they're able to prosper and make themselves as happy as possible. Free trade makes that happen. And again, the bend in this graph is the prosperity that we're talking about. Prosperity per capita. Yeah, it's not going to be equal. It's not even always going to be pretty, but if we can encourage and promote honorable business, then we'll have greater prosperity for all and lower poverty as time goes on. The prosperity lowers the poverty, and that improves people's lives. Stop worrying so much about the inequality. Start worrying about, are we making society free enough for everyone to prosper? And that's where I'll end it. Thank you very much. Do you want some questions? Yeah. Oh, okay. Shay Yan. What is a good economic theory? Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. Hopefully there's some out on the table.
And not only that, Connor wrote one for you too. I don't remember what it's called, but we've got it out here.
Yeah. And can I add this to it? Maybe not strictly economic theory, but The Law by Basquiat kind of sets up the proper institutions.
In their package.
Yes.
Earlier, you were talking about trading. I agree with everything you says. When President Trump became president, he works very hard to bring business, production, etc., back to the United States from China. Could you expand a little bit from the economics point of view?
Yeah, and this is maybe one tiny area where I differ with Trump. That I think free trade across countries is more beneficial both to US individuals and Chinese individuals, that trade prospers both countries. And so if your leaders are worried more about erecting trade barriers to protect jobs, by necessity, they're also saying that they are willing to force Americans to pay more for goods and services in order to protect jobs. And that is a form of extraction, forcing trades that Americans didn't want compared to other trades they would like to make. And so I would say that encouraging free trade domestically and internationally will be beneficial to all.
Could I add just one thing?
Yeah.
In iPencil, I was blessed to meet Leonard Reed because I got involved with the way long time ago. He brought up the point that nobody can make a pencil as you did. If you stop and think about it, the wood can come from Canada. We visited a rubber plantation in Malaysia. They told us, the owner of the plantation told us how he had to have the workers cut the plant in such a way that it would not kill it, but it would bring forth the liquid rubber. They could only do it during a certain time of the day. They then had to load it up into vats right away onto trucks. They had to take it to the boats to be shipped over here, to be processed so we could have one at the end of our pencil.
That's great.
Absolutely. So that's cooperation between all of these countries. And the more prosperous a country is, the less likely they are to go to war.
So I understand, like, not to protect jobs by doing any trade restrictions. But what about, is it free trade if one is using slaves and others?
Yes, I agree. Always talking.
No, I would say that would be supporting extraction indirectly, wouldn't it? Because slavery is a form of extraction. And so if we want to say, all right, I'm going to make a conscious decision not to trade with them because they're extracting, because I would be profiting from that slavery in a way by having a lower price. So yeah, I think it's perfectly legitimate with that.
The action may be the same, but the motive was.
That's right. And I understand that a lot of international trade restrictions, tariffs and quotas, and things like that, I don't think any of them are motivated purely by economics. I think there's also political aims with them too. And so in speaking about the economics of it, it has to hurt us economically. But politically, maybe there's a political motive for making that restriction that I'm not speaking to. Yeah.
So not so much for me, but for these kids, would you touch on minimum wage just a little bit? Because it's really.
The minimum wage, while promoted by, I'll say that they're nobly intended advocates for it. They want to help workers. In promoting it though, and actually getting what they want, they're actually hurting the workers they intend to help. Those that are at the bottom of the end of the income spectrum with the least skills and the least experience are the first ones to lose their jobs and hours from a minimum wage. In fact, the history of minimum wages has come from early industrialists in the United States who wanted to protect themselves from low-wage competition of starter-up businesses. And it also comes from apartheid South Africa, where it was used as a tool of racism. It's interesting. We want to raise the minimum wage to help minorities. It's actually been used as a tool to hurt minorities. And the economic evidence is overwhelming. Minimum wages hurt minority, low-skilled young workers the most. Yes.
So how would you say that would get rid of it as a society?
You know what? In the last 8 to 10 years, we have gotten rid of it. The economy has grown so that the minimum wage isn't even a binding wage anymore. In fact, I'm kind of a nerdy economist. When I go to a fast food place, I don't just order my food, I ask other things. So I'm like, hey, what are you paying your starting workers? I ask them. It embarrasses my kids. And before the pandemic, all of them were saying $8.25, $8.50, or $9 an hour. Nobody was paying the minimum wage. It had been kind of inflated out of existence because our economy had grown so much. The minimum wage wasn't having an impact. And you know what? Workers were not paid nothing. They were paid even more because the demand for labor was so high in our growing economy. So that's the way to get rid of it. Just stop raising it. And then it'll have no impact over time. Let's end it there. Do we have to get to dinner?
We've got.
Oh, 5 more minutes. Okay, great. Yeah, let's do more questions then. Okay.
Can you explain the selfishness?
Oh, yeah. Adam Smith wrote about this in his theory of moral sentiments. And he said it's not in the interest of people, it's not necessarily in the interest of people to not take into account the well-being of others. But we do take into account the well-being of others. As a parent, I like to see my kids eat broccoli. You know they might not like it, but I know it's good for them, right? I care about the interest of others. People ask me why I'm a conservative. And my first answer is I'm a conservative because I care about people. In studying this, in studying economics, I've come to realize that economic freedom is the basis for encouraging more trade and more production that goes with it, and people's lives are benefited from. And so when we talk about businesses wanting to maximize profits or households wanting to maximize utility, yeah, they have their selfish motives for that, but they also care about others. The United States is one of the most charitable countries on the planet, if not the most charitable country on the planet. And it's because we care about others. Selfishness and self-interest are not the same thing. When people give to charity, I would call that in their self-interest, but I would not call it selfish.
Next year, we're going to have a class on propaganda. Because, and tomorrow you're going to hear Ben Swan talk about media bias. And if I could just interject one quick thing. I can remember when the media was interviewing this young woman who worked for a living, and she said, you know what? My boss said that we were going to expand, he was going to add more people because business is going so well, and that I would get an increase in pay. When the economy went down, she said, but now he's saying that not only is he not going to add more people, but that I don't go from part-time to full-time. And she put her hand on her hip and she said to the press, he must not know that I've got bills to pay. Instead of the media doing anything, they just stopped it there. He didn't say, well, don't you think that your boss has bills to pay? And if your boss can't pay the bills to keep the lights on in the building, he doesn't have a business, and guess what you don't have? So this is that whole thing that we talk about, the politics of envy. And we're going to be talking about propaganda next year. We're going to be talking about this a lot because between the media and some of the politicians, especially you young people, you're being sold a lot of nonsense.
So I've struggled with this a lot from an economic, because I hate property tax. I think there's something morally and economically inconsistent with property tax. But governments do have a proper role and they need money to do it. From an economist's perspective, what is a better way to fund local, state, federal, proper roles of government instead of things like property taxes or maybe tariffs that mess with free markets?
We pay tons of taxes. I think even Milton Friedman had a quote about how many taxes he pays before he even eats breakfast. You know, it's just, you think about all the things you do, and everything is taxed. Reagan said if it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. That's kind of the feeling you get from government. But in terms of choosing which types of taxes, as an economist, I would say the least distortionary kinds of taxes. In other words, the ones that affect people's behaviors the least. Now, I don't think you should have to rent your property from government. You shouldn't have to think about that as you make your property purchases, that we shouldn't be taxed on something we own because then we don't even own it. I also, if I were to pick one tax and say one tax to serve them all, and just pay that one tax, even if it's a higher rate, so that we can fund everything we need to, I would use a sales tax or a consumption tax. And that's because as an individual, you can control how much you pay by how much you consume. And if you decide to consume less to avoid some of the tax, the way to consume less is to save more, and that leads to more economic growth through capital production. But income taxes distort behavior away from work and away from production. So if I could choose one tax, I'd choose the sales tax. And if we want to get rid of the property tax, which I'm feeling in this room, we'd have to be able to make the trade-off to say we still want schools and we want to get rid of the property tax. We might have to be willing to pay a significantly higher sales tax, but one that is less distortive and that we can avoid if we want to by saving more.
We've got 15 minutes to get get your hands washed and get over there to eat. So we probably ought to finish it now and that's saying.
Thank you.